Hello and welcome. Tonight, delegates at the UN Climate Conference in Dubai approve a deal to help countries cope with climate change as President Bola Tinubu meets King Charles III on the sidelines of the conference. Africa, with all its human and natural resources, has no reason to be poor, and that's according to the president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina. And both chambers of the National Assembly begin deliberations on the general principles of the 2024 appropriation bill.
On business news tonight, OPEC Plus sets Nigeria's 2024 oil output target lower than expected at 1.5 million barrels per day as the coalition and its allies agree to voluntary crude output cuts.
On sports news tonight, Super Falcons of Nigeria beat Cape Verde 5-0 in the first leg of their 2024 Women Africa Cup of Nations final round qualifying fixture in Abuja.
And from Abuja, the police in Kaduna arrest members of an 8-man kidnap gang responsible for the abduction of several people in Soba local government area of the state.
And in international news from London, 3 people have been shot dead in Jerusalem after 2 attackers reportedly opened fire at a bus stop. At least 6 others have been injured.
We begin from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, where over 190 world leaders are attending the United Nations Climate Conference COP28. Delegates at the conference today approved a deal on a new fund that will help countries cope with the impact of climate change. The adoption of the agreement comes during the first day of the talks that will focus on the global stocktake and the phase-out of fossil fuels, as well as build-up of renewable energy. Earlier, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Simon Steele, told delegates that countries need to accelerate climate action because communities around the world depend on it. Our correspondent, Ayala Kasim, who's in Dubai, reports.
I declare His Excellency Dr. Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber elected President of the 28th session of the Conference of the Parties.
The man not just expected not to lead a talk on climate change, being the CEO of the United Arab Emirates State Oil and Gas Company. He has also been accused of having a deal with players in the fossil fuel industry. When he eventually took over the mantle at the opening of the conference, he stated his mission.
For my part, I pledge that I will run an inclusive and transparent process, one that encourages free and open discussion between all parties.
He scored his first win at the conference with the agreement to establish the Loss and Damage Fund. This comes after the Transitional Committee agreed on a set of recommendations, but some still see the progress as being too slow.
We are taking baby steps, stepping far too slowly from an unstable world that lacks resilience to working out the best responses to the complex impacts that we are facing. We must teach climate action to run, because this has been the hottest year ever in humanity. So many terrible records were broken, and we are paying the price with people's lives and livelihoods.
Winning economies from fossil fuel has been a thorny issue at these conferences. Nigeria, as one of those dependent on it, is seeking deals to help the transition plan.
This is an ETP, Energy Transition Plan, that has been put in place as far back as just last year, 2022. And we've spent this last 1 year, laying the foundations and then preparing all the necessary groundworks that will make the project attractive for what? For investment.
The UAE president is hosting the World Climate Action Summit on the 1st and 2nd of December. President Tinubu is expected to join other world leaders to build on decisions their countries have made in previous conferences. From the venue of COP28 in Dubai, Ayola Kassim, Channels Television News.
Mr. President, very good to see you. Yes. And the trouble is, you never think they're taking it. There's no sign of opportunity.
Technology has moved on it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Staying with the climate summit, President Bola Tinubu today met with King Charles III of England in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, on the sidelines of the conference. Both leaders had arrived at the city to participate in the conference, where leaders from over 190 countries are expected to participate. President Tinubu announced the meeting on his X account, describing the British monarch as a passionate climate advocate. According to him, I had a productive meeting with His Majesty King Charles III of England, who is also the head of the Commonwealth and a passionate climate advocate. He adds that the meeting was a significant step in strengthening the partnership between Nigeria and the United Kingdom, and says he is optimistic about the positive impact our joint efforts will have on our planet's future as we look forward to setting an equitable global standard for environmental stewardship at COP28. We'll have more on the climate conference in the course of the bulletin. But back home, President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, says since he assumed office, the financial institution has committed about $10 billion into various spheres of Nigeria's developmental endeavor. Dr. Adesina, who is a guest speaker at a public lecture to commemorate Guardian newspaper's 40 years anniversary, says Africa and indeed Nigeria will never earn global respect if poverty is not eradicated on the continent. Reeling out several statistics to drive home his point, the AfDB president goes on to prescribe solutions to achieving a self-sufficient continent. Our correspondent, Olu Phillips, reports.
It's the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs grounds here in Lagos. Therefore, some serious talk is in the offing.
I use my camera to look for truth.
The Guardian newspaper has been around for 40 years since its first publication, and to mark the time for that length of work, it's chosen a public lecture. Two topics, actually. The first is for the world to respect Africa, and the second presentation is on federalism is the answer. A proudly Nigerian export to Africa and to the world, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina starts on this note.
Let me be unequivocally very clear. Poverty is not normal. It is abnormal, especially when we have so much resources and when it has been pervasive for so long. And that is why I believe Africa should not become a museum of poverty.
Doing the numbers, 431 million out of the 1.4 billion people living in Africa live under extreme poverty, and that has increased by 84 million people since the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. It is time for poverty accountability for government, according to the lecturer.
Oil and gas, minerals and metals, it is abundantly clear that there is no transparency or very little of it in, and of course on accountability for how we manage these abundant resources. If that trend continues, it will be a disaster for Africa.
Dr. Adesina's lecture stretched out through vaccines and health, electricity, energy transition, natural resource as blessings and not curse, food and agriculture as trajectories of change to help Africa and indeed Nigeria earn global respect.
South Korea moved the GDP per capita that was $350 in 1960s when it got independence to approximately $33,000 in 2023. Now that's the kind of quantum leap that we need rather than attempt to be saying we are dealing with alleviating poverty.
Then to the second lecture. Here's the view of an erudite scholar and the Director General of NIIA.
You need people who understand federalism. You need people who would advocate for it. You need people who would defend it. And that is the role that I see the Guardian papers playing today.
In my opinion, that is not running as a federation, and we should take models like in the US, where each state should be able to develop accordingly at their own speed, instead of relying on the center in Nigeria and Abuja. There are a lot of minerals and resources and human capacity in each state, and I believe they should run independently to extract the best possibilities that they can get from that.
A well-attended event with guests drawn from old and new staff of the organization, its management, scholars, government officials, friends, and others. The warm wishes here by many is for many more successful years for the newspaper organization. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
A day after the President presented the 2024 appropriation bill, lawmakers at the National Assembly have begun deliberations on the budget. At the House of Representatives, while commending the President for the thoughtfulness put into the budget, the lawmakers are charging themselves to properly oversight the implementation of the budget when passed. Our National Assembly correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
And so it begins, the process which will lead to the passage of the 2024 appropriation bill. It's the first allotted day as the House of Representatives commences debate of the bill scheduled for second reading. Lawmakers comment the general principles of the bill as they look to play their part in the actualization of the President's plans.
There is indeed a sacred obligation on all of us as members of Parliament in oversighting ministries, departments and agencies of government to ensure that we scrutinize these officials of government to partner with the efforts of Mr. President so that Nigerians can enjoy the dividends of democracy.
Well, I thought it's very necessary to commend Mr. President is for his own readiness in the investment in the life of young people.
Young parliamentarians debate the education budget and addressing revenue shortfall by cutting wastage in governance.
In the history of Nigeria, we're having the youth having access to students' loan, having education freely accessible to the young ones.
The federal government has an excellent report on its table, the Oronsai report. Mr. Speaker, if Nigeria wants to consolidate revenues, decrease wastage, and ensure efficiency, we must insist on the full implementation of that report, which recommended that certain agencies that are duplicitous should be merged together.
The monitoring and evaluation, the emphasis that was placed on that by Mr. President further explains the detail and the attention that is required by all of us, my honorable colleagues, in our various committees.
Honorable Fulata raises concerns over some parameters of the budget.
The power market, the exchange rate is about 1,165. Whereas the official rate is 750. The third area of concern, Mr. Speaker, is the allocation for education. Mr. Speaker, we must declare an emergency on education because there is mass exodus of lecturers from universities and tertiary institutions.
Day one of the budget comes to an end as the House adjourns plenary to Friday, hoping to pass the bill through second reading for committees to commence the budget defense process. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, we'll bring you more insight on Nigeria's participation at the COP28 climate conference ongoing in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, with our in-house political analyst, Laolu Akonde. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the News at 10 coming to you live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Delegates at the UN Climate Conference in Dubai approve a deal to help countries cope with climate change as President Bola Tinubu meets King Charles III on the sidelines of the conference. Africa, with all its human and natural resources, has no reason to be poor, and that's according to the President of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina. Both chambers of the National Assembly begin deliberations on the general principles of the 2024 appropriation bill. And 3 people shot dead in Jerusalem after 2 attackers reportedly opened fire at a bus stop. At least 6 others have been injured, some of them critically. Mr. Still at the National Assembly and at the upper legislative chamber, the leader of the Senate, Senator Bamidele Okpeyemi, announced that the appropriation bill is deemed to have been read for the first time by virtue of the presentation before the joint session of the National Assembly by President Bola Tinubu. He urged the lawmakers who began arguments on parallel lines to approve the second reading of the bill for consideration by the Appropriation Committee and other committees. Our National Assembly correspondent, Gloria Umezuke, reports that the senators also identified with women and girls as part of the 16 days of activism.
Plenary began on an orange note, a solidarity by lawmakers with Nigerian women as part of this year's 16 days of activism against gender-based violence.
On the elimination of
The lawmakers debate the motion moved by Senator Ireti Kingibe, calling for the elimination of violence against women.
Over 28,000 cases of gender-based violence have been reported nationwide. In all these reported cases, over 9,000 have been opened against offenders, while over 8,000 are still pending in various courts.
When I was a governor, I discovered that the penalty for rape was so minimal that it was more or less an incentive. And even the penalty for defilement was, for me, laughable, that you wonder if it is worth the time we spend in prosecution. I think the country needs to review all of those laws and the sanction that must go with it.
We should urge the Federal Ministry of Education and the Nigerian Universities Commission to prioritize the issue of accommodating female students on campus to guard against abduction of female students that live off campus.
The lawmakers also asked the police to strengthen the prosecution of perpetrators of gender-based violence.
Distinguished senators.
They then commenced debate on the general principles of the 2024 appropriation bill 24 hours after President Bola Tinubu made his presentation.
There is a growing concern over continued borrowing. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, to finance the deficit, therefore, is to engage in new borrowing totaling 7.83 trillion naira.
The executive took time to package the budget, and we are being asked to rush the process, and to my mind, this is not fair.
Additional loans that will be sought from wherever should be deployed to revenue-generating projects so that those loans are in themselves self-liquidating. They will pay off themselves over a period.
Oil production assumptions were other critical areas debated.
It's a matter of urgency. Deliberately ensure that our oil production does not decline again. We have duty as members of the parliament to help the executives to review the PIA.
The debate continues on Friday, December 1, when it is expected that the 27.5 trillion naira 2024 budget would scale the second reading. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
All right, let's now dwell more on the ongoing climate conference in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, and we're being joined by Channels Television's in-house political analyst, Mr. Laolu Akoni. Great to have you on the news at 10.
Good evening.
All right, so it appears COP28 is starting on a promising note with the approval of a new fund that will help countries cope with climate change. What's your thought on this? Let's start with that.
Yeah, well, I guess there is a bit of excitement that we attend that news, considering the fact that UAE took a very formidable lead to announce $100 million, Germany about the same figure, European Union about $245 million. But I don't expect the excitement to go very far when you remember that since the Paris Agreement, the commitment that developed nations actually made in terms of climate change adaptation funding is actually 100 billion annually, okay? And that was made about 12 to 14 years ago. The commitment was to put on the table for developing countries $100 billion annually. So I hope that this is not going to be a situation of a little too late, because even in Nigeria alone, based on the federal government's estimate in the energy transition plan, Nigeria will need new funding of at least $10 billion annually. That's just in Nigeria. So yes, it is. It's a good way to start the conference. It promises to be possibly better, but if you look at the extent of the damage or the potential damage that we're talking about, Africa has there's a dire possibility that between 30 to 60% of arable land that would have gone for farming could be gone by 2030. So these are very serious challenges, especially in Africa. And the developed world, the rich nations, they have to do much better than this.
All right, so President Bola Tinubu is expected to present his statement tomorrow. But before then, in your view, how prepared do you think is Nigeria on the issue of net zero emissions target and the global energy transition that will, of course, facilitate that target?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So Nigeria actually is one of the first countries in the continent to develop an energy transition program. Maybe it's important to just clear the air and say that, look, so there is a climate change crisis, and even though Africa generally has a share of about 4% of the CO2 emissions globally, just about 4%, the developed world have about 44%. But the danger, the potential damage is actually coming at a faster rate in Africa. For instance, if you look at it very well, even Lake Chad is already shrinking. And the African Development Bank even said that if care is not taken, that African economies will slow down between 5 to 15%. If we don't do what we needed to do. So Nigeria, I think a couple years back, actually developed the energy transition program to take us from where we are now to a situation where we have net zero. Now, the world said 2050, but I think it was President Buhari that said Nigeria will need a little bit more time so that Nigeria is going to get there in 2060. And I think he announced that a couple years back at the UN. So Nigeria does have a fair understanding of what has to happen. And like I said before, in that energy transition plan that Nigeria developed, about $410 billion of new money will be needed in Nigeria through investment and hopefully other development sources to be able to do what we need to do to get to that transition by 2060. But one important point is that while we are dealing with their problems of climate change, like I said, Lake Chad is shrinking, we might lose arable land because of flooding and other problems. We also have the greater challenge, in my view, or equally important challenge of poverty. For instance, in the whole of Africa, we still have about 8 out of 10 Africans have no electricity. In Nigeria, you're talking of scores of millions of our people. So there's a serious energy poverty. And of course, we also know about the multidimensional problem of poverty in the country. So we will need to be able to use gas, much longer than the transition, the global transition is seeming to agree.
We'll definitely have to leave it at that. We'll have to leave it at that. We really don't have much time. Mr. Laolu Akone, Channels Television analyst, political analyst, thank you so much for your thoughts indeed.
Thank you very much.
Of course, your award-winning Channels Television will be bringing you all the details from the Climate Summit over the next 2 weeks. Now, our crew, led by our environment correspondent, Ayola Kasim, will indeed be giving you a comprehensive coverage of events at the summit. So do remember to keep a date with us on Channels Television. To politics now. Edo State Governor Gordon Obaseki says his Deputy Governor Philip Shaibu has the constitutional right to contest the seat of the governor. He, however, adds that whether he would back his ambition depends on the party's position. He voiced his position in Bauchi shortly after a closed-door meeting with Governor Bala Mohammed and former Governor of Akwa Ibom State Udom Emmanuel. Governor Obaseki said they are in Bauchi to discuss party politics and national issues.
The relationship, as you know, is cordial. He wants to run for the office I currently occupy, and he's free to. And I think as a Nigerian, he has the constitutional rights to run. Nobody can and should stop him. The party will decide, and also the members of the parties will decide who will be the flag bearer of our party in the forthcoming gubernatorial elections in Edo State.
So would you support him?
I'm only one of millions of party members in Edo State, and I don't think my vote alone will determine whether he becomes the party's flag bearer. Nigerians are suffering, and the suffering is almost unprecedented. But I think we should stop lamenting and say, what do we do as leaders to confront the issues we face, to reduce the sufferings of our people, and to put more food on the table? The year is getting to an end with seeing prices of food items go up. What can we, as PDP governors, do to ameliorate the sufferings of our people? These are some of the things we keep to talk about, while preserving the unity of this country.
Still to come on the news at 10, OPEC Plus sets Nigeria's 2024 oil output target lower than expected at 1.5 million barrels per day as the coalition and its allies agree to voluntary crude output cuts. That's on Business News. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's join Gloria Umizoke, who's indeed standing by at the nation's capital to take us through what's happening from our Abuja studios. Great to have you, Gloria.
State Police Command says it has arrested some persons for their alleged involvement in kidnappings and armed robbery in various parts of the state. The command spokesperson, Mr. Mansur Hassan, in a statement says the suspects were arrested at their hideout in Noba Farm by security operatives led by the divisional police officer. He explains that preliminary investigation reveals that the suspects were responsible for the kidnappings of the organizing secretary of the All Progressives Congress in Kaduna State, Honorable Kawu Yakasai, at Soba local government area on August 25, and another victim, Adamu Muazu, recently. The police spokesman, however, disclosed that the leader of the kidnapping syndicate, Wan Hanazuwa, is currently at large and is still being trailed by security agencies, while the arrested suspects will be arraigned in court upon completion of investigation. And in Ogun State, family members of the slain director of the finance in the office of the governor of Ogun State, Mr. Taiwo Oyekomi, have demanded justice for his untimely death during an armed robbery incident in Kuto area of Abeokuta, the state capital. They made the call during a condolence visit to the family by the state governor, Mr. Dapo Abiodun, in company of other government officials.
There are so many loose ends and so many hanging questions. But then, we are human. We will leave you and trust in your capacity and your ability to bring whoever is involved in this destiny house to book within the shortest period of time. That only will console us more.
While condoling the family, Governor Abiodun said the government is taking responsibility for all that happened and also responsibility for the welfare and well-being of Mr. Taiwo Oyekomi's family, assuring them that those responsible for his death will be brought to justice.
I want to assure all the members of his family, particularly his wife and children, that we will not leave you. We are accepting full responsibility for what happened yesterday. We will take full responsibility for your welfare and for your well-being, knowing that even that will not be enough to replace the loving husband, father of your children, and head of his household. Our prayer is that the Almighty God will forgive all his sins, will grant the repose of it.
The Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Architect Ahmed Dangiwa, is advocating affordable housing with focus on the average Nigerian worker, who is described as being in the majority. Mr. Dangiwa made this plea at the groundbreaking ceremony of a 480 housing units project by Citygate Homes, a real estate and construction firm in Abuja. The founder and chairman of the Citygate Homes, Mr. Michael Ejogu, says the organization will continue to contribute to the solution of housing in Nigeria.
Present at this groundbreaking ceremony of a 480 housing unit project by Citygate Homes, a real estate and construction firm, is the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Mr. Ahmed Dangiwa, executives of the ministry, alongside the chairman and other officials of Citygate Homes and members of the public. The Citygate Kukwaba 2 and 3, they say, has been tastefully conceptualized for exceptional living in Abuja.
We are providing 52 family homes in the phase 2 and 430 family homes in the phase 3. We have a block of flats for the medium income earners. It's affordable. And we also have a semi-detached duplexes, which is equally affordable. They will have a super luxury, fully detached duplexes for the upper class.
The Minister of Housing and Urban Development commended the management of Citygate Homes for their efforts to provide housing for Nigerians. He also advocated affordable housing with focus on the average Nigerian.
The initiative taken by the Citygate Homes aligns perfectly with the government vision for a sustainable urban development and housing. This project, therefore, embodies the collaborative efforts between public and private sectors, showcasing how partnership can drive impactful change and contribute to the growth and development of our nation. I will request the management of Citygate Homes earmark a certain percentage of the 480 homes as affordable housing with a price tags that average Nigerians can afford to buy. We can think of cross-subsidizing so that the higher cost houses can subsidize the lower cost houses, the affordable ones.
Since its inception, the present administration has consistently emphasized its dedication to serving the Nigerian people. The management of Citygate Homes asserts that this project is inspired by the renewed optimism with the aim of enabling Nigerians to acquire affordable and quality housing.
The Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN, is advocating the need for businesses in Nigeria, especially micro, small and medium-scale enterprises, to leverage technology to enhance access to finance. The managing director of the bank, Mr. Tony Okpanachi, stated this at their 4th annual lecture series in Abuja. Mr. Okpanachi asserts that leveraging technology can help entrepreneurs dismantle barriers to finance, enhance transparency, and improve the country's current position in the World Bank Global Ranking on the ease of doing business.
Very much, you may be seated.
It is the 4th annual lecture series of the Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN, an event that has brought together entrepreneurs and information and communication technology experts in Abuja. The theme of the lecture is A Digital Nigeria, leveraging technology to improve ease of doing business for MSMEs, a topic that the managing director of the bank believes will help entrepreneurs to break down barriers to funding and enhance transparency.
DBN, as a key advocate for MSME financing and a driver of sustainable development, recognizes the vital role of technology in Nigeria, and thus will continue to promote solutions that unlock innovative funding for MSMEs. The bank will continue to drive creativity that focuses on improving our position on the ease of doing business.
The keynote speaker is the Director General of the National Information Technology Development Agency, Mr. Kashifo Abdullahi. He underscores how leveraging technology can help to improve the country's position in global ranking on the ease of doing business.
We can leverage technology to improve ease of doing business for SMEs. And also, according to research, when you use technology in your SME, you can increase your revenue or your productivity by 26%, and you reduce your overhead cost by around 22%. So we need to focus on research, especially on emerging technologies.
Vice President Kashim Shettima is represented by the Special Advisor to the President on Economic Matters, who highlights some government initiatives to enhance the ease of doing business in Nigeria.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration is committed to creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Already, policies such as streamlining the process of registering businesses, reducing taxes, and other regulatory burdens have been implemented to improve the ease of doing business in Nigeria.
The bank has in the last 5 years assisted entrepreneurs to get over 700 billion naira worth of loans to grow their businesses, a record that officials say they are determined to surpass as they encourage more micro, small and medium businesses to leverage technology.
So that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to Ayo for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you so much, Gloria. The Nigeria Incentive-Based Risk-Sharing System for Agricultural Lending, NIRSAL, is making a case for the increment of all bank loans to agri-businesses to at least 10%. Managing Director of NIRSAL, Mr. Abbas Masanawa, was speaking during an inspection tour of one of the farms the company guarantees in Rivers State. The farm, Globetrot Farm Sponsors Nigeria Limited, produces more than 100,000 birds annually, with plans to diversify to other livestock farming.
This poultry farm in Obiakpu village in Oyigbo local government area of Rivers State is the reason for this visit by officials of the Nigeria Incentive-Based Risk-Sharing System for Agricultural Lending, NIRSAL. NIRSAL is here on inspection of the farm facility in company of its partner, Polaris Bank.
These are breeders. And we hatch the eggs.
The farm owned by Globetrot Farm Sponsors Nigeria Limited is reputed as producing 28,000 eggs daily and over 100,000 birds annually. NIRSAL says this partnership is going stronger since considering its benefit of agribusiness and ultimately food security.
We covered more than 200 billion in Naira on Kobo into agri-space by ensuring that we work with the bank, we partner with the banks to support the different sectors of agriculture. Before the coming of NISA in 2013, almost just about 2% only, which is very, very insignificant, of bank lending is to agri sector. And we cannot continue to rely on oil. We have to diversify our economy. As it is today, 10 years after, more than 6% of bank lending is agriculture. And we can all do better.
Polaris Bank commits to this alliance.
The aim of this is that the bank is expanding its frontiers in supporting agro-allied businesses. And Globetrot being a key player in this sector, in this part of the region and the country as well, was a great opportunity for the bank to step in and support the agro-allied business. We're going to see Polaris investing more in the agricultural sector as well.
The farm owners say the initiative has seen them grow their investment.
The relationship with NESA has been quite productive, and even in terms of speed of delivery, I would say quite impeccable. Immediately they stepped into the relationship, the transaction moved quite fast, and in a record-breaking level, we're able to get to financial close.
With a credit base of $500 million, NERSAL says it has so far guaranteed over 200 billion naira in agricultural lending to farmers across the country, and is pushing for 10% of all bank loans to go to agribusinesses latest by 2025.
It's now time for some business news with Melinda Akilam.
Many thanks, Ayotunde. Welcome to Business News. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies has set Nigeria's 2024 oil output target lower than its expectation. In a statement released at the end of its meeting today, the coalition of oil producers put Nigeria's target at 1.5 million barrels per day and asked 3 firms to verify the production figures with its African peers like Angola and Congo. The move comes as OPEC Plus agreed to voluntary oil output cuts approaching 2 million barrels per day for early next year, led by Saudi Arabia rolling over its current voluntary cuts. Reactions have continued to trail the 2024 appropriation bill presented by President Bola Tinubu. The latest is from the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Uwane, who is of the opinion that the deficit to GDP ratio at 4% is impressive, coming from more than 6% in previous budgets. He was a guest on our Business Morning program.
The budget deficit last year was over 6% of GDP. You're bringing it down to 4% of GDP. I think that is remarkable. You must give credit. In any case, the budget was crafted by Mr. Budget himself. Ben Akagweze has been on it, so you don't get better than that. So in terms of its crafting, in terms of its direction, in terms of the goals, I think there's no doubt about the fact that a good job was done, right? But
so if the subsidy was still there?
Oh, then you would have been at 7%, if not 8% of GDP.
Of GDP.
Yeah, but the comfort zone for regional integration in most parts of the world is 3% of GDP, right? So you've gone from 6% of GDP to 4%. Moving directionally, you're okay, but the target is to make it go that way. If you didn't have this, when you say subsidies, first of all, subsidies have not gone. Subsidies have been reduced. But the subsidies are not just in PMS and petrol, but they're also in the exchange rate. So you've taken part of that and taken part of this, and then you begin to do other things.
It's another green day for investors in the domestic equities market as the exchange closes the month of November in positive territory. Laddie Williams has all those details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, market sentiments were bullish today as blue chip stock Airtel Africa recorded again. They're adding 10 naira to share price, closing at 1,800 naira, pulling the market up by 0.11%, causing the all-share index there to appreciate 71,365 points for the all-share index, and sitting pretty for the market cap, 39 trillion. The sectoral performance now, all counters we track were subdued today. Oil and gas not able to continue that bullish trend we saw yesterday, 6%. A big move, but it's down 0.14%. Consumer goods down 0.32%. And again, the banking counter is down today. Let's get a check on the tier 1 banks now, the FUGAs that we track. We see FBNH up 0.92%, UBA unchanged, GTCO added 1.43%, Access Core 0.56%. But all of these couldn't counter the 2.71% drop we saw with Zenith Bank, bringing that banking counter down. There's a positive market breadth today with 25 stocks posting gains, while 31 stocks declined. Final trading day tomorrow might end up being a positive week. That's it from me on the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams.
That's Business News. It's back to you, Ayotunde.
Thanks, Melinda. White House security spokesman John Kirby says the United States is working literally by the hour with Israel, Qatar and Egypt to extend the truce due to expire on Friday morning. Earlier today, 2 female hostages were freed by Hamas. Here's Simon Pusey with other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. 3 people have been shot dead in Jerusalem after 2 attackers reportedly opened fire at a bus stop. At least 6 others have been injured, some of them critically. Video shows the gunmen getting out of their car at a bus stop during morning rush hour at the entrance to Jerusalem. CCTV shows bystanders fleeing and shots ringing out. Hamas has claimed the gunmen, who were shot dead by police. At a meeting with the US Secretary of State, Israeli Prime Minister Isaac Herzog condemned the attack and said it highlighted the need to defeat terror organizations like Hamas.
We have casualties, we have loss of life, and I would like to express my heartfelt condolences to the families and, of course, to pray for the swift recovery of the wounded. This is another example of the situation we're in, the endless war that we are fighting against terror organizations, especially Hamas, in these very complicated and challenging times.
Meanwhile, Israel and Hamas have agreed to extend their truce for another day, minutes before it was due to expire. The temporary ceasefire was extended for a 7th day shortly before 5 a.m. following mediation with Qatar. The deal has led to the release of dozens of hostages kidnapped by Hamas in exchange for Palestinians held in prisons and aid deliveries into Gaza. On Wednesday night, 16 more hostages taken captive by Hamas were released, as were 30 Palestinians. So far, some 102 Israeli hostages have been freed, while 210 Palestinian prisoners have been released. Some delegations at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe have left the room as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov began his address. Lavrov's invitation to the summit faced backlash from some countries boycotting the event, and Bulgaria even prevented the Russian Foreign Minister from flying over its territory on the way to the capital of Macedonia.
Господин действующий председатель, госпожа генеральный секретарь, коллеги.
Lavrov told the meeting that the OSCE was on the brink of a precipice and that the West was killing the chances of reviving the group. The former US Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, who played a pivotal and polarizing role in US foreign policy during the Cold War, has died at the age of 100. He served as America's top diplomat and national security advisor during the Nixon and Ford administrations. Despite leaving office in the mid-70s, he continued to be consulted by generations of leaders for decades. The German-born former diplomat died at his home in Connecticut. Kissinger's realpolitik style made him a controversial figure, with critics accusing him of war crimes, but he was also credited with restoring relations with China.
You know, it's not guaranteed we'd have a reform and opening. It's not guaranteed we'd have markets. It's not guaranteed we have the affluence we have today. So I'm not saying that all Chinese recognize this, but I think that intellectuals do know that without a U.S.-China détente, better relations until the end of the 80s, China wouldn't have the space, the international space to grow as it did.
The incoming COP28 president, Sultan Al-Jaber, has opened this year's UN climate summit by urging countries to find common ground in policies to meet global climate goals. Jaber, who is also the CEO of the UAE's national oil company ADNOC, said there were strong views about the idea of including language on fossil fuels and renewables in the negotiated text. I ask you to work together, he said. It's after reports he abused his position as president to try to sign oil deals with other governments. And the gardens of Villa Reale in Monza in Italy have begun the Christmas season with the Trame de Luce exhibition, taking visitors through colourful displays involving light and nature. The multi-sensory exhibition, that will be open until January the 7th, was based on wonders, myths and legends of the royal gardens, where visitors could wander through illuminated trees and magical creatures. It wanted to unite the most beautiful parks and gardens in Italy, from the Botanical Garden in Rome to the Villa Reale Gardens in Monza. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Herman. I'm back in our sports center. Clearly, the Super Falcons of Nigeria are in a comfortable lead in securing a ticket to next year's Women Africa Cup of Nations holding in Morocco with a game to go. The senior girls this evening beat visiting Cape Verde 5-0 in the first leg at the MK Abiola Stadium, where Uchenna Kanu, Esther Okoronkwo and Gift Monday ensured they logged in on the score sheet as they head to Praia on Tuesday with that advantage for a return leg in Cape Verde. But unfortunately, it's not cheering news for their male counterpart, the Super Eagles of Nigeria, who have dropped 2 places from 40th to 42nd in the new FIFA ranking that was released earlier today. You can see on the screen, of course, right here, 42nd. And the leader in Africa is right now Morocco, Senegal, Tunisia, Algeria, and Egypt, all in the top 5. Let's head to Europe and see how things played out in the Europa League. Brighton booked their place in the Europa League knockout stage, 1-0 win at AEK Athens. Second placed Freiburg trashed Olympiacos 5-0 to join already qualified West Ham in knockout round, and Rennes and Sparta recorded also a win right here on your screen. And that's how things played out in the world of sports on the last day of November. Ayotunde, it's back to you.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And the main news again. Delegates at the UN Climate Conference in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, have approved a deal to help countries cope with climate change, even as President Bola Tinubu met with King Charles III on the sidelines of the conference. And that's the news at 10. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. On behalf of all of us here, it's good night.